In this episode, Aileen and Nancy talk about navigating social interactions during personal and collective expansion. The discussion also covers the concept of comfort and how to use animal totems to guide you through your day. Welcome to Expansive Minds Podcast, Gateway to Freedom, a podcast where two friends, Aileen and Nancy, explore and expand beyond what they think they know in order to live a life of freedom. Thank you for joining us, and away we go. Hi.
Hi.
How was your Thanksgiving?
It was wonderful.
Nice.
Thank you. How was yours?
It was good. It was really fattening, but I let myself have that, and then I'll get back on track. Healthier foods. Actually, maybe I'll do that in January. I'll get on track to healthier foods in January. Right now, I'm just going to kind of go with the flow for the season. Speaking of Thanksgiving, we were talking about gatherings, and you had mentioned to me that you were re-listening to the last podcast we did with Vic, and how you basically not become, but your voice sounds different, you say different things, you have different responses based on who you're with. And it's not that it's inauthentic, it's just based on who you're with, you are authentically in the presence of that person.
Yes, you said that. I think you said that really great.
Thank you.
Yes. And so when I was listening to that podcast, I was listening to how I was, for me, repeating myself and speaking slower. And I was laughing because if I was coaching your sports team, that was not what you would get.
Right. But you were channeling. Is that something
yes.
you tend to do when you channel?
When I read energy, I often look to the side. I look all around. I don't know why, but I do, because I'm taking my focus off oftentimes the person in front of me. So I'm not tuned into my conditioning of a 3-dimensional, 5-sensory relationship with them. Right. Which is where words only come out from our mouths and we think nothing else is being said or spoken. So if I look away, I'm tuning in, I'm reading the energy. Its vibration is coming to me and I'm translating it like a translator would translate another language, because it is a language. Its energy is a language. And so I was listening to the podcast and I was talking to Vic about what I was picking up from his move to Utah and all the vibrations that were coming off of him. And I started to laugh and I thought, oh, that's what I sound like when I'm in that space. When I work with people, they'll sometimes ask if they can record what I'm saying, which is great because I'm in this other place and I don't always remember what I was saying.
Yes.
I have an essence of what it is, but in that moment, it makes perfect sense because I'm aligned with them. They're aligned with me. And then people walk away and they're like, what just happened?
Right.
Because we're in this moment. So that brought you and I to talk a little bit more about what happens when we are shifting as people. We're moving out of our conditioning. We're moving out of the old paradigm, the matrix, the construct, the orchestration of a persona. All those are ways to describe it. As we move into more freedom of who we are authentically, one of the things that happens is people can start to feel lonely, or they're afraid if they make that change or shift, they won't have anybody to talk to in general or talk about what they're seeing or what they're knowing. There's a real concern there, and that can feel sad. There's a grieving on many different levels, and also some resistance to making that change. And then the fear is, if I go hang out at Thanksgiving, or if I go hang out with my soccer buddies or my dance buddies or my book buddies or my childhood friends to hang out, I'm not going to be being authentic. I'm going to be my old fake self with them. And am I doing myself a disservice or an injustice, or them, if I'm not talking about, I think I might be from another planet, or I really want to just speak about love, or I've chosen to be a vegan, or I don't drink anymore. So that is a very typical stage of transformation into freedom.
It's so beautiful how things unfold. But as you were talking about that on Thanksgiving, so we had 24 people. And so I do a lot of energetic prep before they come. I mean, I bless the house, I smudge, and then I kind of make a little intention to myself that I'm going to acknowledge each guest. And then what often happens in prior years is there might be some guests I don't talk to as much. And in retrospect, I think it's because I maybe wasn't feeling connected and aligned to them. And so I simply, aversion's too strong a word, but I didn't gravitate to them because maybe I'm assuming energetically I was in different spaces. So then my mom passed in August. So it was very important to me that this Thanksgiving be truly a connection of just loved ones, people who loved her and love each other. So my niece, who I don't get to see often, and I don't find myself getting to speak with her often. And we were talking and I was putting her drink together and she said something. She used words like, she said, well, yeah, I'm teaching yoga now. I really feel that that's the direction Source wants me to go. And I'm like, oh, you said Source and you said yoga. Oh my God, come here. And I pulled her over and we sat down. Have you heard of Abraham Hicks? Have you heard of it? And I was so excited because I had in my mind sort of not expected, but thought, well, maybe I won't be using words like Source today, or I won't be talking specifically about Neville Goddard or Abraham Hicks today. And I ended up spending a chunk of the day with her, not because it was forced, but it was just this draw of us. She's new to this stuff and I was so excited to share it with her. But mind you, a good brunt of my family they're lovely, but they're a bit old school. And so I just wouldn't be speaking these sorts of things around them. And I had sort of resigned myself to I'm just going to have a loving day, even if I don't speak those things. And I got to speak my truth that day. The universe just simply orchestrated it.
Yes.
That I ended up being able to be with her. And again, I was authentic with everybody,
yes.
but trying to be sensitive to, I don't want to make people uncomfortable or confused with certain words. But then at the same token, I got my own personal little exchange of energy with my niece that I just never even predicted.
Such a great story. Yes, that is the story. So here you are aligning, by yourself, knowing this is your truth. You're going to align your energy. You're going to create a sacred space. You don't have to tell everybody who's coming. By the way, I'm making a sacred space for you all, right? Now, if all your friends and family were into that, then that's totally cool to be, hey, letting you know, I'm saging the house before you show up.
My sister, the one who passed from MS, she used to just say, it feels so good in here. She intuitively just knew. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Meanwhile, I didn't tell her, you should have seen the crap I cleaned up. There was a bad energy vortex there, and I smudged that, and I filled this space with love. And
5 hours of singing bowl.
Yeah, exactly. And I pull out, I have the Frank Souls, frankincense, and myrrh stick. I'm like, good enough for Jesus? Good enough for us? So yeah, I bring out the frankincense and myrrh for stuff like that. But they just feel it.
Yes.
I do believe they feel it, even if they don't quite know what they're feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And so in our lives, when we're shifting, when we have these, what did I say, spiritual awakenings, sacred awarenesses, deeper alignments, the world that is around us that we've orchestrated, that we created, we were birthed into, however you're going to say it, right? We love them. We can be our authentic self, and we don't need to say all of these things out loud to them. Because it's well, as I say, if I'm part of a knitting group and we're all sitting around knitting, I'm not going to start talking about soccer.
Right.
And in my soccer group, I'm not going to sit down and start knitting. Right. So we are being authentic. We're not withholding. We're not cheating anybody out of anything or doing an injustice. We're choosing to speak appropriately, aligned to the conversation and the energy that's in that space. The agreement that people have that we're participating in is fine. And also to this really beautiful point where your niece was the one who perhaps it felt a little bit like a risk, or she recognized she could say it to you. Yeah, sometimes there is someone who does speak up and offers this different truth into a space, into a group. And in this case, she was the one that spoke up and you were like, yes. And then the
poor thing, I pulled her over to the table. That was it. I got the rest of the day. And I think it's so funny. She just started teaching yoga. I see a lot of people unwittingly transform when they start doing yoga. I think they're so in their body. They don't realize that this particular pose is a very sacred meridian that's opening up energy and unblocking them. They're a lot of times, and this is, of course, in our society, they're doing it to get in shape. And then they don't really realize that they're also transforming on an entirely spiritual level as they mindfully go into their body and they're not even trying for the transcendence. You're cleaning out. You're doing it with this particular movement meditation that you just didn't even really plan to do. People are transforming. There are lots of ways to transform. You set that intention that you do, or you find a piece of knowledge, or next thing you know, you're doing these movements and it's like, oh,
yes. Yeah. And for a lot of us, we have to kind of sneak in what we call like kind of the back door. You don't know that's what you're getting when you put the intention out, right? There's like a desperate plea in some way, right? There's this, and that we could say is the gift of desperation, where we're desperate. We're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then we don't even know it. We're drawn to something like, oh, well, someone said, yoga would be good for me for my back problems. Or someone said this would be good for me for this, or whatever it might be. I just did this the other day. I was laughing because in my job, I sit in my chair a lot. It's a way for me to focus when I'm doing the hands-on body work, and I'm in a chair. Now, I've had the same rolly chair maybe for almost the 26 years of my practice. Now, it's a rolly chair that I got in exchange. Someone said, I don't really have any money. Do you need a rolly chair? I was like, well, not really, but okay, cool. That's fine. So I used it because it was this great energy exchange. Well, I have a new office on Nantucket, and that chair has a back to it, and it's black. And my office, the way I kind of roll around the table in the office, I was noticing I was leaving black marks on the wall from the chair. No. And I rent the space from my friend Erica, who I just love. I was like, well, I can't have these black spots on this chair. I mean, I can't have these black spots on the wall for Erica. Like, no, that's not cool. So I was like, well, I need a backless chair. Now, meanwhile, mind you, my left leg was starting to give me problems because I'm driving in the car all the time and I'm sitting in my chair all the time. But I didn't think to get a new seat or look at my seating for my own leg. Yeah. I was looking at it because I didn't want to leave a mark for Erica, right? For her space. So I end up spending a nice amount, totally cool amount of money on a saddle seat chair that I love, pain in my leg gone. And I'm laughing. I was laughing, thinking to myself, this is so backdoor kind of stuff where I got a much better seat for myself. I didn't buy it and I didn't look for a great seat for myself and my own leg pain. I go because I didn't want to leave marks on Erica's wall.
Now that brings up another point. It's so funny. I think we serve other people often, but without serving ourselves. And so here you are in an uncomfortable chair and you're just sort of putting up with it because it's kind of like the sock on the floor. You just keep walking over it and it's like, this just is. However, because someone else was needing or you didn't want to offend or hurt whatever someone else, then you took action. And I just had this discussion with Kimmy because when I went to a wedding, she let me borrow this necklace. Well, it had broken and I got it repaired. And I'm looking at my jewelry closet. I'm like, how many necklaces of my own do I have that I haven't repaired? I went to the jeweler to get hers repaired. It was broken when she gave it to me, and we just kind of looped it around. Right. So I wasn't even the one who broke it, but I went and got it repaired. And I was just like, well, why don't I?
Yes.
And that is something maybe as we move into this holiday season, we were talking about going to be gathering with other people. So be open because you might find these new connections. So don't be insecure. I'm going to this holiday gathering. I think you were saying your clients like, who I'm going to talk to, because the universe will present someone to talk to. But also as we go into the holiday season, take care of you. Like, so if we're in this season where we're thinking of other people and we want to be generous, at the same token, well, what would serve you during this holiday season? season. What would you like? And you're going to buy one for someone else, buy one for yourself. Or if you're in alignment, then you are better comfortable to help your clients, like you said, with that chair.
Right.
And it's the same way with just life and everyone around you. When you're in a solid place and you're comfortable, then you're better able to serve. So in the season of giving, receive too.
Absolutely. And the trusting of being in your alignment, the focus. I'd said to you that I'm noticing for myself that I'm starting to do affirmation readings again in the morning. Yes. There's things because I'm noticing all this energy going on around me. It all comes down to participation. How do we participate with others? And again, that's a big shift. That's the big shift. We participate kindly with others. Some of us have been in cultures where we participate more kindly to others than we do for ourselves. Right. So that's a shift we want to do. We want to know and trust that it's okay and important to be kind and make sure we're comfortable and that we know what comfort is. A lot of us don't know what happiness is or comfort is. Yes. And I think that super then triggers us when we're having a shift into a higher vibration, when we're moving out of our orchestrated old personas. That's the part where we're like, oh, but I'm going to be lonely because I created this persona in order to have friends. I created this persona in order to fit into my culture, to fit into my religion, to fit into my family. So therefore, if I shift out of this culture, whatever it might be, and so let's go back to my chair for a minute. What if I came from a culture, like where did I learn that? Where did I learn that I had to sit in this uncomfortable chair? And that, is it that if I had showed up and said, hey, everybody, I spent $200 on this chair for myself, would I have been scolded for that? Did I believe that I wasn't worth that? Right. Is it better to have, oh, this is great that I got this chair. It wasn't free, obviously, but I might say a free chair where it wasn't because it was in exchange for some energy work, for an energy session. Right. So it wasn't free. I still, quote unquote, paid for it. Yes. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, why am I sitting this? So I think that's important for us. Like what is comfortable? What is receiving? What is happiness? And the stressors can be when we hear people say, well, finding comfort for the holidays. Well, some of us have no idea how to even define that.
We don't take care of ourselves. We put other people first. But what Kim and I were talking about this morning, comfort. And I was saying how I was feeling blah because I found out my Colin is going to be, my baby is going to be going to school in January. He's going to be living on campus. Granted, it's 15 minutes away, but he's my last one. And so in the span of just a few months, things that I identified myself with that as a contributing member of society, I took care of my mother, healthcare provider, a couple of days a week, and then she passed. And I had a small business, group fitness exercise, where I basically took care of many people and in my sessions, and I had to close out with COVID. And now the mother, caregiver, cook, cleaner, now my baby's going away. So I was just saying to her, I'm like, bleh, now what do I do? How do I contribute? I add no value. And my husband goes to work every day and he adds the value. And because she was saying, you need to do something for you. You need to take care of you. And I'm like, but I'm comfortable. I just meditated. I just sat at the table. I had a breakfast. In the old days, I never had time to do that. I never had time to meditate, and I had time to sit at the table and actually have breakfast. I would eat on the road as I was driving into the office. And she said, but what you're doing now is harder. Mm-hmm. She said, because back then we were on autopilot. Right. We weren't even recognizing it. We were just sort of in this program where buried beneath was the work that we're doing now. Really the essence work. Whereas before we just ran through action, and now we're not in that. So as I was saying, I'm not even contributing. She's like, the fact that you have some downtime, you're actually contributing more energetically. And this is kind of the hard stuff. The work is my meditation this morning. I'm like, I have to do the work. And they were like, the work is the vacation. The vacation should feel like work. It should be the same thing. Those two words don't have connotations with those words. It should simply be just enjoying every moment that you're in. But I thought that was an interesting perspective where I never thought, now that I'm not quote unquote working, I'm working in a different way, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it's hard when you when you equate what you do and then you receive money, then that proves that you're valued. And now everything I'm doing, there is no obvious direct income. And so then if I follow that path of that algorithm of logic, then if I'm not receiving money, then I'm not valued. I'm not of value. So that is like a huge thing that I'm trying to let permeate through my being, but not to buy into that old paradigm that you're only of worth if you're paid.
Yeah. We're all shifting. Everyone is shifting in some way because we're in a collective conversation and the energy and the collective consciousness about it. And the more we can do what you're doing, actually, right? Stepping out of that construction, that orchestrated story, it's all just a story. It's all just a story. And think about all the people in the world who have had to step away from a story that they thought meant success or value. It's hard work and it's imperative work. It's imperative because by nature of judging how and who is of value is what gives us all the isms. It's what separates us. So
right. And simply the fact that we exist, we are of value.
Yes.
You were saying that you're very earlier before we started, your very presence here means you are contributing.
Yes. The impact. We impact the world. The world must work around us, with us, because we exist.
Yes. You were telling a story about the ant or something.
Right. How I was when I had my first spiritual awakening, really profound when I was 24 years old, and I was sitting outside my house. I had my head down. I'm talking to my father on the phone, just like, oh man, this is really hard, right? That was my sense of value. I had a story about who I thought I was going to be. It's the young adult crisis. We can talk about it another time. The young adult awareness or awakening. And as I was sort of just in my woes, I was looking down on the ground, and this ant came walking by, and it distracted me a little bit because I like ants, number one, plus it was moving. So I'm watching this ant as I'm in my sorrow, and she comes walking up, just minding her own business, and then bonked into the side of my foot, and then had to walk around me. My poor dad. He's on the phone just listening, trying to probably console me or give me some, older wisdom. And I just exclaimed, I said, Dad! I don't even know if he was talking. I don't even know what was happening. I was like, Dad, this ant. And I'm trying to tell him this ant ran into my foot and went around me. I was like, I matter, Dad. I matter. And he was like, okay.
As long as you feel better, honey.
Love you, honey. Call me later. But I was like, Dad, I matter. It was in that moment when I saw that the world had to move around me. My actual just physical presence has an impact, and therefore the value and the importance of what I do, even just with my physical body.
Yes.
Right? Then you just go on to like physical, and then you're like, well, how do I choose to spend my money? What's the vibration I put in the space when I'm standing there? Like you going back to your Thanksgiving and putting energy around the space before people show up.
Yes.
You knew. So that actually, when we think about that matters. And yes, we have a society that, sure, if you got paid, if they're like, could you come and smudge my house before Thanksgiving? You're like, okay, great, that's $500, or just give me a crappy rolling chair that I'll sit on for 26 years. But,
that long?
I think it was almost that long. I was like, it rolls. Well, you know how it is.
That's
I'm part Italian or whatever. I'm comfortable. What's comfortable?
It's good enough.
Hey,
it's
all right. What's comfort?
Yeah. What do you need?
What do you need more food?
Yeah.
What can I do for you? Take this chair. This is a better chair. You take that chair.
Yep.
Let me fix your necklace, but not my necklace.
You were talking about just a total random, maybe not relevant or relevant. So you were talking about you bought a saddle chair, and last night my brother was over, and he was talking about a pub that he went to in Wyoming, and they were on saddle chairs. And so I'm like, what's up with the maybe I gotta get me a saddle. Is that what the universe saying? Maybe I gotta get me a saddle. I don't know. Because that's really strange.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll look up horse totem, right? Because
maybe, sure.
Yeah.
Take it to the next level.
Yeah. Maybe I'll look up horse totem, which is actually something we never talked about, just kind of as a little spiritual tip or technique. We talked about using angel cards or tarot cards. We haven't gotten into numerology yet, but we have not talked about animal totems. So yeah, I mean, we're coming up on the end of our time. I'm going to look up, you know what? I'm going to do it while I'm here.
Yeah, do it.
So in saddle, being in my space of awareness last night and again this morning, so I'm just going to go on my phone and I'm going to say animal totem horse.
And as you're saying that, I have this is the synchronicities that are so sweet. And so it's a reminder to people when you're going through a transition like this, remember, look for the synchronicities. They're always there and they're really sweet. So my first animal medicine cards, this ties into everything we're talking about, no surprise.
Right. Wait, you hear what this horse said.
Okay.
How it ties
this is so fun.
Yeah.
So my first animal medicine cards, I don't remember how or why, but I bought them when I was working in Nantucket Electric Company in Nantucket in the early 90s. I worked with a bunch of women who are amazing. And so I showed up with my animal medicine cards and they were like, I was that person, right? That was me willing to take a risk. I love these women. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. So I brought my cards in and we would pick them and everyone was getting into it. It was really fun. So we'd pick animal cards and they were very open and into it, which was great. Well, last night, and you said animal, last night online, I saw that there's this company called LTD something. And it made me think about the same electric company women every holiday, because we didn't have computers back then. We were on an island. We couldn't go shopping. Someone would bring in this catalog from LTD. The company still exists. And we would all place our orders. We still have some of the things that we ordered from that. So I wrote to the electric company women last night. And I said, look at this. It still exists. I'll be shopping at LTD again, to show that I got that. And I got all the women talking and we just laughed and laughed. And it was a great memory.
Yeah. And just sort of unfolded into synchronicity.
It did. Yeah. And then the animal medicine cards just was like, oh, that's so funny you're saying that. That's where I first brought them.
Was the electric company. Awesome. So given the stuff we've been talking about, so I just pulled up animal totem horse. I think this is a nice way maybe to close.
Yes,
we're getting, as we're in the throngs of this holiday season and the transformations that we're all going through energetically and as a mass culture in the 3D to 5D. Yeah. Horse Spirit says, take responsibility for the consequences of your choices. This does not mean you have to suffer. It just means you make the best of things. Horse, right? And buy a new chair.
Exactly.
Here it gets better. Horse symbolism lets you know that you have the power to change anything and everything you choose in your life, like buying a new chair. Moreover, it means that the wild freedom of this spirit can be harnessed and used for the benefit of those around you. Perfect. So as we move through those holiday gatherings and circumstances, we could just harness this freedom of spirit of the horse energy, and while taking care of ourselves, this doesn't mean we have to suffer. It just means we can harness that and have the freedom to explore new situations, new relationships, new experiences.
That's great.
Awesome. So I guess until next week, more to be revealed.
Thank you for joining us on Expansive Minds podcast, Gateway to Freedom. Until next time, more to be revealed.